Richard Louis joining us from JM Financial. The conference was really underway, saw quite a bit of response. It's ending today. So let's talk to him as well as to what the feedback was and how was the overall mood and momentum when it comes to that conference as well. Richard, hi. Good to have you on the show. Let's begin by just that. Overall, from the investors' point of view, where do you think the interests lie and what's the view on India right now?
Okay, so one correction, it is not ending today, it is actually going on tomorrow as well. And it is pretty rare that we have a 3-day conference, right? I mean, we usually have a 2-day event, but this time because of the interest in India in general, we are having to do it over a 3-day period. So we are actually hosting about 160 to 170 companies this time, and which is why 2 days was not enough to actually fit in so many companies, right? And I think the mood is bullish. I was having lunch with a couple of fund managers, and I think the question really is that where could the downside lie, right? Because that is what everybody is trying to grapple with, and believe it or not, there weren't many convincing answers where the downside could lie. So I think the mood is overall bullish. And I think that mood is obviously helping this kind of an investor conference a lot. To give you an anecdote, there were some people complaining that it took about 5 minutes, for them to be able to get lunch because of the crowd, right? And that is not a bad problem to have. I think the problem of plenty is not as bad as the problem of poverty.
Was it a small room, Richard, by any chance? That's the reason why the queues were long. Did you book a small room?
Not at all. Not at all. No, you guys know Trident, right? I mean, that's a good one, by the way.
Okay. Richard, why is that the economy is looking strong, but the bottom of the pyramid is not growing? And if the bottom of the pyramid will not grow, which is 80% of the population and maybe 20-25% of the total spending, that's called the foundation. If the foundation is shaky, then how can the economy grow per se?
Yeah, so I think, this is really the typical K-shaped recovery that that people have been talking about, right? I think K-shape is something that we've all been talking about in economics, and this is something that as clear as it could get. If you talk to a lot of the businesses and a lot of the corporates who are presenting at the conference, also talked about the inflation pressure that the country has gone through, that the consumers have gone through, and that is what has impacted the lower end of the consumption spectrum, right? I mean, if you look at let's start with COVID, right? I mean, people like you and me, we continued working, we continued to earn, we maybe even saved a lot more on costs because we didn't have to travel. So that is fine, and you double that up with the kind of inflation that we've seen in the last year and a half. I think that is what has really what has really hit hard on that section of the population. But I think it's getting better. I was again talking to somebody during lunch, and I think he was referring to to the kind of growth that we've seen in two-wheelers, for example, right? And if you look at historical evidence, and we've done this work some years back from what I can recollect, the two-wheeler growth is actually a very good precedent to growth in other parts of the rural economy, right? And including consumer staples. If I remember the coincidence right, I think two-wheelers growth precede consumer staples growth, by about 2 to 3 quarters. It's a bit counterintuitive, but that is what data suggests. So I think we are on a recovery path. I think the mood will incrementally get better as we get into 2024. The one risk really being about how weather pans out, right? Because that's not really under anybody's control. I mean, there were some newspaper clipping that I've read about 2024 calendar turning out to be a super El Nino year. So that, I guess, is the risk to the whole narrative. But otherwise, I think we are on pretty good footing.
A lunch to discuss what could go wrong, or lunch to discuss rural patterns. 2 lunches in a day. Wow, man. Richard, 2 lunches in a day?
Yeah, and lunch to also lunch. Yeah, it's not 2 lunches in a day. It's the same lunch with different people,
okay.
And also lunch to really gauge how many people are there at the conference. So that is 3 of them.
Okay, so for tea and for the drinks and dinner, what are you planning to discuss?
That I will tell you once we've discussed.
Okay. So Richard, let's understand the area of your specialization, the consumption. Now I'm sure everybody says that, okay, look, the India romance is consumption. We like what the economy is doing. We like the per capita binge which is happening. We like the fact that air travel, footfalls, everything is moving in the right direction. But how much of this incremental good news is something what markets are pricing that in? Where do you think there is opportunity in this market where gains or stories or the template is not factored in?
No, I think, given that the growth is so scarce globally, and India is one of the spaces where you have very, very good level of growth, I think that is where the premiumness in terms of people's willingness to pay for is coming, right? So, I mean, if you look at a lot of the stocks, and let's take consumption stocks since you referred to that, right? I mean, this is probably one of the most expensive space. And what you've seen happen in recent months and even years is that as long as the growth comes by and good quality of growth, I don't think people mind paying for that level of growth. And I think that is also an outcome of the fact that growth is pretty scarce in the world. Even if you look at, let's take India for example, right? I mean, in whichever companies you see high quality growth, I don't think valuation is per se a concern.
Valuation is not a concern. You talked about how staples follow the two-wheelers. So I'm guessing you are telling your clients to buy into staples as well. But what would be that peaking point for discretionary as well? Because affluent India and that premiumization wave seems to be doing very well. What would tell you that it's nearing peak, if not peaked?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part. Can you repeat that?
Sure, I just meant to ask you what will be that monitorable on the premiumization wave which will tell you that we are nearing the peak there?
That we are nearing the?
Peak, the top.
Yeah, so, okay, so you guys are aware that we had Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt of Tara Sons at the conference yesterday. I think he's done an interview on this channel yesterday, right? He made a very interesting point regarding premiumization. And he, the point he made is that you need to really distinguish between premiumization and luxury, right? And according to him, and I totally agree with that viewpoint, is that premiumization is going to be a way of life as far as a country like India is concerned, right? Because there is a large working population. Aspiration for a better lifestyle is something that everybody is looking for. So to that extent, I don't think we are in a situation where we are going to be talking about premiumization peaking, because it's going to be a part of everybody's life. And premiumization in this context needs to be differentiated from luxury, because luxury is something which is let's say more discretionary. But as far as premiumization is concerned, you can be premiumizing in every aspect of your life, right? I mean, it depends on the income spectrum that you are in. And so at every level, there is a relative level of premiumization, and I think that will continue. I don't think that is going to peak, so to say, to answer your question.
Just to wrap it up with this good old comparison that, okay, China is selling X million cars, India is selling 1/10 of that. China is selling, China footfalls are X, India's footfall is X divided by 10. Where do you think that realistic catch-up with global averages will happen?
I don't think one should look at it that way, because you have obviously there is this expectation that once we and it depends on categories to categories, whether 2,000 per capita GDP is the tipping point. For some categories it could be 3,000 GDP per capita, and I think as investors the way we need to look at it is in terms of the growth that is palatable to us. And I think the way a lot of businesses are going about doing their business planning is that the endeavor is actually to grow faster than the GDP of the country. And you do have many categories in consumption which are able to do that. And if you're able to do that sustainably and profitably, I think that is where you have the winners.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's so nice to have you. You've already eaten your lunch, so I can say enjoy your evening.
Thank you very
drinks and
much.
dinner,
Yep,
cocktails.
thank you
And
very
we
much.
should discuss it, what you've discussed next time, at least on the
Yeah.